Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be building the Osborn Model Kits diesel fueling station. When you open up the kit, you're going to find this easy to assemble laser cut wood structure. I wouldn't call these craftsman kits. They're more like a good way to get started if you wanted to go down that road into the craftsman style kits. I like to lay out all the pieces and have a good idea of where everything is oriented, all the numbered pieces, start removing some of the little snibs that have come loose from the laser cutting process. Then I'm going to give a good look at the instructions, and I like to review them over and make my plan of attack from there. Depending on the assembly process or painting sequence, I'm going to deviate from the suggested flow to suit my own individual plan. When I start cutting away all the pieces, just a simple X-Acto knife, there's a couple little tabs that are going to be left to remove it from the wooden sprues and then free up your piece. So I'm going to start with the platform for the building portion first. So loosen off all the little snip tabs to free up the actual jig itself. And I'm going to actually use this as a jig for the building. So even though the first step tells you to glue it down to the platform, I'm not going to glue it down. I'm just going to use it as a jig because I'm going to, as part of my painting process, paint up all the concrete stuff and then paint up all the white stuff and then glue it all together. One tool that I found handy for these kits is also a nail file. It helps clean up all the edges, especially after the wood burning process. So it will clean up the edges and give you a nice glue-in surface. And the nail files are nice and hard, and so they keep nice and flat, so you're not using sandpaper and then rounding over an edge too badly. I glue up all my joints using white glue, just a craft glue from the dollar store, and use some clamps and set that one off to the side and start moving on to the next part, which the next one is going to be the fuel tank. This one is an interesting one because it uses a whole bunch of flat wooden pieces to create the cylindrical tank. So you have a series of round pieces mixed with pieces that form the stand, and then an alignment jig that runs basically down the middle, acts as like a pin for you to slide them on, and that's what's used to create a cylindrical surface. I really like using the Osborn Model Kit stuff. One added benefit is it's made in Canada, so it's nice to support local. As well, they have tons of different unique structures and scenery items, and I have them scattered all throughout my layout. And everything that they make in N scale, they also make in HO and vice versa. So certainly keep watching to the channel, as one of my plans is to do a future video on just a tour of all the Osborn stuff. The nice thing about scenery is it helps you bring your layout to life, and that's one of the nice things about the Osborn materials is they add all those little trackside structures and features that really adds that lifelike feature to it. And here you can see everything starting to finally come together after everything's sanded and cut off the wooden sprues using the alignment pin, and it's just a matter of sliding things into place and in the order that they suggest, so then it will fit onto the platform later on. Now, one thing that I found on the second last piece, which is supposed to be some type of lid or cap for the tank, it actually did not fit. Once I cut it out here, then when you are supposed to slide it over top, it quite literally was trying to put a square peg through a round hole. I don't think it's anything that I did wrong, but after a little bit of humming and hawing, I just decided that I would just go without it. After giving up on the cap for the fuel tank, I decided to move on to the last piece, which is a pipe that leads from the fuel tank down to the ground. I'm assuming this comes back up to the gas pump, which I'll assemble a little bit later. I do apologize to anyone that actually knows what these pieces are called or their full functionality. I have to admit that I don't know the full functionality of this setup, but it was one of those things that certainly I wanted to have to round out some to my yard and make it sort of a full and complete setup. So while those pieces dried, I went back a few steps and I removed the building that was sitting on the base where I was using as the jig, and now I'm going to start on the concrete barriers for the base. The steps are pretty straightforward and glued together nicely. One thing that I like to do is test fit all the pieces before gluing them, and this allows me to confirm that they fit, as well to see what faces are actually going to contact other faces to determine where the glue should actually go. I like to try to cut down on how much extra glue is all over the place. And then again, setting that off to the side, letting that glue up a little bit more. Then I went back to another step and started adding the roof. So I glued that into place and finished up a few other steps with the gas pump. Had to assemble a couple pieces to make the gas pump a complete feature for painting later. I let everything dry overnight and then came back the following evening and started with painting the tank white. And I later followed up with painting the building and the gas pump white. One thing that I noticed right away is that the laser cutting process didn't necessarily leave the round pieces completely round, and I should have actually taken a little bit more time to sand the ribbed aspect of the tank itself, which is going to come to bite me in the butt later on. Then setting that off to the side, then I went to the base and the concrete barriers and painted all of them in gray. So this is why I assembled things a little bit out of order and sort of like structures, so then I can paint all the gray stuff and not have to worry about painting the building and masking things and getting the wrong color paint on things. So I can paint all the white stuff separately and then paint all these gray pieces separately. And as I predicted, I wasn't going to be happy with the tank. The round pieces were just too jagged, and it gave the tank this ribbed effect that just really didn't look right even after painting. So I ended up coming back and using some drywall compound to fill in the ribbed areas using an old Tim Hortons gift card. Don't worry, I made sure that there was nothing left on it. And this sort of filled in some of the gaps and helped clean up the area, giving a more cylindrical aspect to it. I was afraid with the sanding that I was going to create some flat spots and it wouldn't be as cylindrical, so that's why a nice good heavy coat of this stuff and then some light sanding would help clean that up. While everything gets a chance to dry up, I was able to come back and continue work on the building itself. So this is where you assemble the door and add that onto the structure. And here's when you actually start using some of the decals that they provide. So they're peel and stick decals. They're not the dunk in water and use it that way type of decals. So you just peel them off and place them where you need them to go. So they're nice and thick and they cover up well. And the roof gives this nice corrugated steel look to the roof without having to do extra painting or detail work or anything like that. The next step involved adding the tank to the base. I got a little overconfident at this point, so I assumed that everything was going to line up perfectly. In fact, my overconfidence led me to putting the glue down without even following my own advice that I gave you earlier of test fitting everything. But what I found is the base piece of the tank didn't actually line up with the cutouts on the base itself. I'm not quite sure if it was something that I did or how this sort of came to be, but I eventually just gave up on trying to force it into place and cut off a couple of the tabs to allow it to sit in place. And then came final assembly. The sanding pipe, at least that's what I think it is, I actually painted that off camera in a chrome metallic finish. As well, I gave the building a light wash using India ink and isopropyl alcohol mix, and that sort of helped bring out some of the brickwork that's on it. And finished off with some of the final decals that they have, some of the explosive and no smoking signs to give a little bit more realism to the tank itself. And then the final step of adding the building to the layout. I haven't actually glued it down just in case I want to move it, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to stay where it is. I'm quite happy with how it turned out, and it adds that little bit more bit of realism to the yard area and the layout itself. Hope you enjoyed watching, and thanks for tuning in.